hell is not real, there is no such thing as hell. You and I, we have been both lied to and duped. Let's dive in.
Look at this wasteland, the floor is fractured and dry. You got the aura, the power to touch up the sky. If you the son of the father, the king of the hill, turn all these stones.
There are some words that get thrown around and we treat it like it's a closed case. But we're going to dive in and we're going to find out what hell is. Like we do in every video, we're going to go to the scriptures to get the answers. What are the first 3 things that pop up in your head when you think about the word hell? Is it fire? Maybe torture? And it has to be eternal, right? Let's start with the word hell. Where the hell does it come from? When Christian missionaries arrived in Anglo-Saxon England, they're translating the Bible, and it was in Latin, and they're translating that into Old English. Well, they ran into a problem. The Latin text used words like infernus or Gehenna. Instead of inventing a brand new word, you know what the missionaries did? Well, they grabbed the existing pagan Germanic word for the underworld, hell, and repurposed it to describe the Christian concept of afterlife. Ladies and gentlemen, now that is hell. So now, you might be asking, if there is no hell, why does the King James Version uses the word hell 54 times? And it's not only King James Version, other versions as well. I use the NIV, and NIV uses the word hell. Now, this is why I encourage everyone to study the Bible using the original language in Greek, in Hebrew, and also remember, never forget about the audience relevance. Let's look at all the words the Bible uses as hell. Just for your information, it really depends on the translation, right? We said King James Version uses it 54 times. And some translations do a decent job. But there are 3 categories of the word hell. First, it's Sheol in Hebrew, which is a realm of the dead. It's used in Greek as the word Hades. So Sheol and Hades, they're both the same thing. The realm of the dead. The Bible uses the word, sometimes like in NIV, it will use grave, it will use pit, sometimes hell. So Sheol and Hades is one category. It's the realm of the dead. Number 2, this. Now, the Greek uses the word Tartarus. And yes, some of the translations, like the King James Version, uses the word hell for this. Remember the time when Jesus cast the demons out and they said, please don't send us to the abyss? And number 3 is Gehenna. And that is what we're going to dive in today. Just to make sure that we're clear, the Bible uses the word Sheol or Hades as hell, Tartarus or abyss as hell, and the word Gehenna as hell. All right, Gehenna is used 12 times in the New Testament. And yes, in the King James Version, it is translated, even the NIV, which I use, translates into hell 12 times in the New Testament. And 11 times, it's why I tell you, I'm not a math geek here, and yes I am, but I tell you these numbers because they're important. 11 times it's used in the Synoptic Gospels. The only time it's used outside of the Gospel, it's in James chapter 3, verse 6. All right, let's go to Matthew chapter 23, verse 33 to verse 36. And this is a great example of what Gehenna really is. I'm going to read it for you. You snakes, you brood of vipers, how will you escape being condemned to hell or Gehenna? Who is he talking to? He's talking to the Pharisees, teachers of the law. How do you know this? Verse 29. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites. And then he says, verse 34, therefore, I am sending you prophets, sages, and teachers. Some of them you will kill and crucify. Others you will flog in your synagogues and pursue from town to town. And upon you, he's not talking to 21st century Pharisees. He's talking about the Pharisees that were in front of him. Think about the audience relevance here. Jesus is talking to the Pharisees and says, upon you, the Pharisees in front of me, will come all the righteous blood that has been shed on earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. Now, verse 36 is very key here. Does Jesus tell us falsely? No. He says, truly, I tell you. All this, what is all this? It is the judgment that's going to come to them. And it's all of this judgment will come on our generation, maybe 4,000 years from now. No, we're talking about that generation that Jesus talked to. Verse 36 is very clear. The condemnation being sent to Gehenna. Verse 33. You Pharisees, you snakes, how will you escape being condemned to Gehenna? Truly I tell you, all of this will come on this generation. And 37 is even clearer. It says, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill prophets. Verse 38 is a clue. Look, your house is left to you desolate. Let's think about this. Jesus talks to the Pharisees, says, you are vipers. You've killed all of the prophets from the day of Abel. And upon you, because you will not be escaping the condemnation to hell/Gehenna, Jesus specifically states that the blood of all the righteous martyrs will be required. If Gehenna in this verse in 33 means an invisible, eternal afterlife where individual bad people go when they die, Jesus' statement makes no logical sense. An individual person's eternal damnation isn't triggered by sins of people who lived 1,000 years prior. Jesus is prophesying a corporate national catastrophe that was historically fulfilled when Titus burned Jerusalem, trapped over 1 million Judeans inside the city walls, and literally filled the physical valley of Hinnom or Gehenna with corpses. Now, let's tie this back to how this connects with the Old Testament. Because wasn't the temple destroyed twice? So there was a first temple built by Solomon and a second temple that was rebuilt and that's been destroyed by the Romans. Come with me to Jeremiah chapter 19, verse 6. So beware, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when people will no longer call this place the valley of Ben Hinnom, but the valley of slaughter. The valley of Hinnom became a literal place of slaughter and siege when the Babylonians sacked Jerusalem in year 586 BC. When Jesus used the word Gehenna, his audience would instantly recognize that he was quoting Jeremiah's warning. He was telling them, if you reject the Messiah, a second Jeremiah-style destruction is coming to Jerusalem. And this valley of Hinnom will once again become a mass grave. And this part is going to blow your mind. Jeremiah tells us exactly when he started his ministry. It's in Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 2. In the 13th year of the reign of Josiah. Do you know what that year was? That year was year 627 or 626 BC. Exactly 40 years or so before the destruction of Jerusalem by the Babylonians. All right, you know who was preaching that Jerusalem will be judged and destroyed in the valley of Hinnom or Gehenna? Yes, you're right, Jesus. You know how many years? Exactly 40 years before Jerusalem fell to the Romans in year 70 AD. 40 years for the first fall of Jerusalem, 40 years for the second fall of Jerusalem. None of this information that I'm sharing is my feelings or something cool that I conjured up. These are cold, hard, scientific, historic facts. Now come with me to understand the word Hinnom. What is Hinnom? The first time the valley of Hinnom is used is in Joshua 15, verse 8. Then it ran up the valley of Ben Hinnom along the southern slope of the Jebusite city that is Jerusalem. Now we know where Ben Hinnom is. It is on the south side. It's the south valley of Jerusalem. It is first used purely as a geographical marker to map out the boundaries and the borders between the tribes of Judah and Benjamin. Now we talked a little bit about the word Gehenna, the New Testament word for hell. Let's break the word down to see what it even means. Gehenna is just a Greek way of saying the Hebrew word Hinnom, which means the valley of Hinnom. Over time, language does what it's best and it gets a little lazy. So the word got shortened. In Jeremiah, you saw that it was the valley of son of Hinnom or Ben Hinnom. The son dropped and it just collapsed into Hinnom. So it became Hinnom or Gehenna. But here's the mystery. Who or what is Hinnom? We know it's a name, right? It's a son of Hinnom. So what is Hinnom? If you look at the raw Hebrew root consonants, it's the He, Nun, Mem. That's what actually makes up Hinnom. There are two fascinating, and it's fascinating because they're completely opposite. They're completely opposite ways to read the actual name Hinnom, and they both tell a story about the destruction of Jerusalem. The first option that you can read, and if you ask me, I would lean to the second one, but let me tell you the first one. And the first one's fascinating if it's real. The first option links to a word for deep mourning or grief. In Hebrew, the letters Nun and He are what linguists call weak consonants. So they tend to slide around, drop off, or swap places. Because of that, Hinnom is closely tied to the ancient root word Nehi, which means to lament or wail or to violently mourn. And if this is the origin, long before Jesus ever walked this earth, the valley was prophetically named the Valley of Mourning or Wailing. When Jesus warns his generation that they're headed for Gehenna, he isn't inventing a new torture chamber. He's pointing to the geography right outside on the southern side of the city wall. Now, this is where I lean towards. The core root of Hinnom uses the exact same consonants as the famous Hebrew word for grace or favor. So you have heard of a guy, Hannibal. Well, Hannibal comes from the word Hannah and Baal. So it means the grace of Baal. This is the exact same root word you find in the name Hannah. You've heard of people named Hannah. It means grace. So, and there's another name called John. Everyone knows the word name John. But in Hebrew, it's Yohanan. So Yohanan means Yahweh is gracious. And if you say Hannah or Hannah, which means just grace. So if Hinnom comes from the root, the valley originally meaning the valley of the gracious one or the valley of grace or favor, think about the devastating irony here. God gives Israel this beautiful, fertile land, and it was the valley of favor. But what did Israel do? They turned this valley of grace into a place where they sacrificed their own children to pagan gods. They took God's grace, twisted it into something grotesque. And because they abused the grace, the prophet Jeremiah, he's saying God's changing the name. It's no longer the valley of Hinnom or grace. It's now called the Valley of Slaughter. So let's tie all of this together. When you read scriptures through the eyes of the people who actually lived it, the fiery, torturous chamber, that completely vanishes. In its place, you find a real valley, a real warning, and a real historical tragedy. Jesus wasn't talking about the afterlife. He was warning that generation that he spoke to about end of their world, the literal destruction of the city of Jerusalem in year 70. And the Western Church and Christianity, we took a Germanic pagan word, slapped it over a Hebrew history, and used it to scare people for centuries, millennia. But the facts don't care about tradition. If this blew your mind, and if you're ready to dig past the traditions we've been handed down, hit that subscribe button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. If hell isn't real, what actually happens to the damned?
Look at this wasteland, the floor is fractured and dry. You got the aura, the power to touch up the sky. If you the son of the Father, the King of the hill, turn all these stones into loaves. Show me you real.